Hey everyone, I never thought I'd find myself posting here, but I really need to get this off my chest and get some advice. My name's Mike, and I'm from Vermont. My wife Sarah and I have been married for 7 years. Up until a few months ago, I thought we had a great relationship. We've been through our ups and downs like anyone else, but we always managed to figure things out. Or so I thought. About 6 months ago, I started noticing changes in Sarah. It wasn't anything drastic at first, just small things. She started working late more often and spent a lot of time on her phone. I mean, we all get busy and we all scroll through Instagram or whatever, so I didn't think much of it. But then she started pulling away from me emotionally. Her once playful teasing turned into annoyed sighs, and her warm smile was replaced with distant looks. She stopped asking about my day, and when I tried to talk about hers, I got one-word answers or a vague, "it's just work stress." My gut told me something wasn't right. I brushed it off at first, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. After all, Sarah always had a bit of a larger-than-life personality. She loved to talk about how lucky people were to have her around and would joke about how she could have married a millionaire. It was something I used to find charming in an odd way, but now those comments started to feel sharper, like little knives I couldn't quite avoid. She also started paying more attention to her appearance, like she was trying to impress someone. She bought new clothes, started wearing more makeup, and was constantly taking selfies. I asked her about it once jokingly, and she just laughed it off, saying she wanted to look good for herself. Fair enough, I thought. But the feeling in my stomach didn't go away. Little did I know that intuition was right. Things came to a head one evening after Sarah fell asleep on the couch. She had spent the whole night glued to her phone, laughing quietly at whatever she was reading. I tried to ask her about it, casually of course, just to start a conversation. "What's so funny?" I asked, smiling at her. "Oh, nothing," she said, locking her phone and turning to me with a forced grin. "Just work stuff. You wouldn't get it." Her tone was dismissive, and that didn't sit right with me. This wasn't the Sarah I married. She'd always been open and eager to share the smallest details of her day. Now, every time I asked, I got the same vague answer. "It's work stuff, Mike." And when she finally drifted off to sleep that night, something inside me snapped. I couldn't let it go. Her phone was sitting there on the coffee table, screen dark but practically taunting me. I'd never snooped through her phone before. Trust had always been a cornerstone of our relationship, or at least I thought it was. But that night, my gut wouldn't let me ignore the nagging suspicion anymore. I hesitated for what felt like forever, my hands trembling as I picked it up. I knew her password. She'd never bothered to hide it. My stomach churned as I unlocked the screen, feeling like I was crossing a line I could never uncross. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found. There, in her messages, was a thread with someone named Kevin. I opened it, and my worst fears were confirmed. The messages were explicit and intimate, leaving no room for misinterpretation. They talked about sneaking away together, sharing inside jokes, and recalling past encounters that were clearly physical. One message from her read, "I can't wait to feel your hands on me again." Another from him replied, "You're the only thing keeping me sane." It wasn't just about sex, though that alone would have been devastating enough. They were talking about feelings. She called him her escape and said he made her feel alive. Alive. As if our life together, the house we bought, the memories we shared, the love we built, wasn't enough for her. I kept scrolling, my stomach turning into knots. There were plans for future meetups, some of which had already happened. Herself. It hit me like a ton of bricks. All those nights she worked late, the weekends she needed some space, the times she seemed distant. They all made sense now. I felt like a fool. A pathetic, clueless fool. My chest tightened and my eyes burned, but I couldn't even cry. I just sat there, staring at the screen, trying to comprehend what I was reading. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the sheer effort she'd put into hiding it, the lies she'd told to keep me in the dark. My wife had been living a double life, and I was the last to know. I didn't wake her up that night. I couldn't bear to look at her. Instead, I went to the kitchen and sat in the dark for hours, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me like a ton of bricks. My mind raced, replaying every moment from the past few months, connecting dots I hadn't even realized were there. Every late night, every secretive smile at her phone, every dismissive answer, it all made sense now. I knew then that nothing would ever be the same. The Sarah I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone who could lie to my face and laugh with another man behind my back. And the worst part, I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. The following days were a blur. I went to work, I came home, I went through the motions, but inside I felt like a shell of myself. I didn't confront Sarah right away. I couldn't. Every time I looked at her, my throat tightened and the words wouldn't come. She went about her life like nothing was wrong, chatting, smiling, and still glued to her phone. It made me sick. At first, I thought about just ending it right there, confronting her, packing my things, and filing for divorce. But something held me back. Maybe it was the sheer shock of it all, or the fact that part of me still couldn't believe she had done this to me. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I didn't just want to walk away. I wanted her to see what she'd done. I wanted her to feel the betrayal, the heartbreak, the devastation she had so carelessly inflicted on me. And then an idea struck me. It started as a fleeting thought, but the more I considered it, the more sense it made. What if I could make her show her true colors? What if I could set a trap and see how far she'd go to cover up her lies? It wasn't just about catching her in the act. I already knew what she was doing. It was about making her face herself, making her choices so obvious that even she couldn't deny them. That's when I came up with the lottery ticket plan. It was ridiculous, I know, but desperate times call for desperate measures. The idea was simple: create a fake winning lottery ticket worth $1 million and let her believe we'd hit the jackpot. I wanted to see how she'd react, how her behavior would change when she thought we were suddenly rich. Would she stay loyal to her lover, or would she drop him for the promise of wealth? Either way, I'd have my answer and my closure. I spent hours that night researching how to make it convincing. I found a template online for a winning lottery ticket and doctored it to look legit. I even went the extra mile to print out a fake article about the lucky Vermont winner. When it was all done, I sat back and stared at the finished product. It looked real enough to fool anyone who wasn't an expert. The next step was to wait for the right moment. I wanted to catch her off guard, to present the ticket in a way that seemed natural. But as I sat there holding that piece of paper, I couldn't help but feel the irony of it all. Here I was, plotting this elaborate scheme, when all I ever wanted was a simple, honest life with my wife. That night, as Sarah sat across from me scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of what I had planned, I realized how far apart we'd drifted. And while part of me hated myself for stooping to her level, another part of me felt a strange sense of empowerment. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't the clueless husband being played for a fool. I had the upper hand, and I was going to use it. A few days later, I decided it was time to put the plan into motion. Sarah was in a good mood that day, laughing at something on her phone as she sipped her morning coffee. It made my stomach churn, knowing that laugh was probably at Kevin's stupid jokes or some sweet nothing he had sent her. But I kept my cool, playing the role of the clueless husband. That evening, after dinner, I casually mentioned that I had picked up a few lottery tickets earlier in the week. "Oh yeah? Did we win?" she asked, barely looking up from her phone. "Well," I said, pulling out the fake ticket from my pocket and holding it up, "you tell me." She grabbed it from my hand and her eyes immediately widened. "Wait, what is this?" she asked, her voice already trembling with excitement. "It's a winner," I said, trying to sound as calm and believable as possible. $1 million, I checked the numbers 3 times. Her jaw dropped, and for a moment she just stared at the ticket. Then she exploded out of her chair, screaming, "We're rich! Oh my God, Mike, we're rich!" I forced a smile, playing along, but inside I was watching her every move, every expression. She was jumping up and down, practically vibrating with excitement. "What are we going to do first? Shall we buy a new house, a car?" "Oh, I always wanted to go to Italy," she rambled, pacing around the room. I let her go on, nodding and agreeing as she listed off all the things she wanted to do with our money. But what struck me most was how quickly she shifted gears. For weeks, she'd been distant, cold, and dismissive. Now, suddenly, she was hugging me, kissing me, calling me her lucky charm. It was almost comical how transparent she was. That night, she was more attentive than she had been in months. She cooked my favorite dinner the next evening, something she hadn't done in ages. She kept calling me babe and asking if I needed anything. It was like someone had flipped a switch, and the Sarah I had fallen in love with was back, except I knew it was all an act. She wasn't doing this out of love. She was doing it for the money she thought we had. But I wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning. I wanted to see just how far she would go, how much of herself she'd reveal when she thought the stakes were high. I didn't feel joy or satisfaction, just a hollow determination to see my plan through to the end. The days that followed, Sarah's transformation was remarkable and, to be honest, hard to stomach. She started spending more time at home, suddenly deciding that her late nights at work or out with friends weren't as necessary as they used to be. It was almost laughable how quickly her priorities shifted the moment she thought we were millionaires. She became the picture-perfect wife, something I hadn't seen in years. She started cooking dinner every night, planning little date nights at home, and even asking how my day was for a change. It was like living with a completely different person. If I hadn't known the truth about her affair, I might have even believed her act. But I wasn't buying it. Every gesture, every smile, every overly affectionate word felt hollow. She wasn't doing any of this out of love or remorse. She was doing it because she saw dollar signs and thought she'd hit the jackpot. It made me sick to my stomach, but I played along, nodding and smiling like the clueless husband she clearly thought I was. Italy came up again, along with a new house and a shiny new car. She even suggested I quit my job, saying, "You've worked so hard, babe. We should enjoy life now." Her words were sweet, but they felt like poison dripping from her mouth. Her phone habits also changed. While she wasn't glued to it like before, she still kept it close and always face down. Once I caught her texting while I walked into the room, and she quickly locked the screen and slipped it into her pocket. "Just checking on work emails," she said with a sheepish smile. I nodded, pretending to believe her, but inside I was seething. I knew exactly what, or rather who, she was texting. At night, I'd lie in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she even realized how obvious she was. Did she truly think I wouldn't notice the sudden shift in her behavior? Or did she just not care as long as the illusion of money kept her comfortable? Despite her newfound attentiveness, I could see cracks in her performance. Sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch her glancing at her phone with a conflicted expression. It was clear she was trying to juggle both worlds, me, her wealthy husband, and Kevin, her secret lover. She thought she could keep it all going, and for now, I let her think that. I wanted to see how far she'd go before the truth unraveled. I was playing the long game now, waiting for the perfect moment to spring the next part of my plan. But little did I know, things were about to come to a head sooner than I expected. The cracks in Sarah's facade were growing, and soon enough, everything would come tumbling down. It all came crashing down one fateful afternoon. I was heading home early from work that day. Sarah didn't know I was going to surprise her with her favorite takeout as part of my ongoing act to play the doting husband. But fate had other plans. As I pulled into a gas station just outside of town, I saw her car parked near the side of the lot. My heart sank. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her excuse that morning had been that she was spending the afternoon at a friend's house planning a baby shower. But there she was, leaning against the driver's side of her car, her posture tense. And she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was Kevin. I recognized him immediately from the photos in their messages. He was taller than I expected, dressed casually in a hoodie and jeans, his body language matching hers. Agitated and defensive, his voice like... They were clearly arguing, and their voices, though muffled, carried enough for me to catch snippets of the conversation. I parked a little further away, not wanting them to see me. I cracked my window, heart pounding, and listened. "I'm telling you, things are different now," Sarah said, her tone sharp. "I can't keep doing this." Kevin threw his hands in the air. "What the hell does that mean? We've been planning this for months, Sarah. You can't just back out now." She crossed her arms, her voice growing cold. "I need stability. He can give me that now. You can't." "Stability?" Kevin spat, his voice dripping with frustration. "So what, you're just going to dump me because he has money now, after everything we've been through?" She didn't answer right away, and in that silence I felt the weight of her betrayal all over again. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I tried to steady my breathing. It was one thing to read her texts, to know she was lying. But to see her standing there, choosing money over her so-called feelings, that hit differently. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. "I need to think about my future, Kevin. I can't risk losing everything. You knew what this was." Kevin shook his head in disbelief, his voice quieter now. "Wow, you're unbelievable." I wanted to laugh at the irony of it all. Here was Kevin, the man she'd betrayed me for, getting a taste of the same selfishness she'd shown me. But I stayed quiet, watching from the safety of my car as they continued their argument. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Painful, but impossible to look away from. Eventually, Kevin got in his car and drove off, leaving Sarah standing there alone. She didn't look upset or conflicted. If anything, she looked resolved, like she had made her choice. And she had. She'd chosen what she thought was security, wealth, and a life of comfort. But little did she know, it was all built on a lie. The $1 million lottery ticket she'd pinned her hopes on was as fake as the affection she was pretending to show me. As I drove away unnoticed, I felt a strange sense of calm. Her actions had confirmed everything I already knew. The next step of my plan was clear. It was time to confront her and let the house of cards she'd built come crashing down. The evening after my chance encounter with Sarah and Kevin, I knew it was time to confront her. The charade had gone on long enough, and every part of me was ready to pull the rug out from under her. I decided to wait until after dinner, wanting to keep up appearances for one last meal together before I revealed everything. Sarah, oblivious as ever, was in an annoyingly cheerful mood that evening. She'd made lasagna, guacamole my favorite, and kept the conversation light, talking about how excited she was for our future now that we were financially set. Every word that came out of her mouth felt like poison, but I forced a smile and played along. After dinner, I poured us both a glass of wine and sat across from her at the dining table. She was laughing at something on her phone, but when she saw the serious look on my face, she put it down. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice dripping with concern. "You've been quiet all evening." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "Sarah, I have some news about the lottery ticket." Her eyes lit up immediately and she leaned forward, excited. "What is it? Did you already claim it? Are we getting the money soon?" I shook my head slowly, locking eyes with her. "No, Sarah, it's fake. The ticket is fake. There's no money." Her face froze, the smile faltering as my words sank in. For a moment, she looked at me like she didn't understand, like I was speaking a language she couldn't comprehend. What do you mean, fake?" she stammered. "You're joking, right? This is some kind of weird prank?" I leaned back in my chair, my voice steady but cold. "No, it's not a joke. I made it up. The ticket, the article, everything. It's all fake. I wanted to see how you'd react. And you know what? You didn't disappoint." Her face went pale, and she sat back, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. "Mike, I don't understand. Why would you do that? Why would you lie to me?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Why would I lie to you? That's rich, coming from someone who's been sneaking around with Kevin behind my back." Her eyes widened, and I saw the panic set in. What are you talking about? Kevin? Who's Kevin?" "Don't play dumb, Sarah," I snapped, my voice rising. "I saw the messages. I know everything. The late nights, the excuses, the lies. It's all out in the open now. And just in case I needed any more proof, I saw you with him today at the gas station." She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. Instead, she sat there, stunned and silent, her hands trembling as she clutched her wine glass. The weight of her actions was finally hitting her, and I could see the fear in her eyes. She wasn't afraid because she'd hurt me. She was afraid because she knew her lies were unraveling and she had no way to fix it. "You left me emotionally months ago," I continued, my voice heavy with the hurt I'd been carrying. "And now, when you thought there was money involved, you suddenly decided I was worth your time again. You weren't staying for me, Sarah. You were staying for a bank account that doesn't even exist." Tears welled up in her eyes and she shook her head. "Mike, I can explain. I wasn't thinking straight. I made a mistake." "You made a lot of mistakes," I interrupted, standing up. "But this one? This one ends here." I walked away from the table, leaving her there to sit in the mess she had made. I knew then that there was no saving us. The Sarah I thought I knew was gone, and in her place was someone I could never trust again. The silence that followed my words was deafening. Sarah sat frozen at the table, her tear-streaked face pale and her hands trembling. For the first time in months, maybe years, she didn't have a clever comeback or a deflection. She was cornered, and we both knew it. "Mike, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You have to understand. I was confused. I didn't mean for things to get this far." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, staring at the woman I once loved. "Confused? That's the best you've got? You weren't confused when you were sneaking around with Kevin. You weren't confused when you lied to my face every single day. Don't insult me, Sarah." Her tears flowed freely now, but they didn't move me. "It wasn't about the money," she sobbed. "I swear, Mike. I love you. I've always loved you." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter, hollow sound that filled the room. "Love? You don't even know what that word means. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done any of this. You wouldn't have lied, cheated, and then tried to weasel your way back into my life the moment you thought I was worth something to you financially." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor, and reached for my hand. I pulled back, and she flinched as if I'd slapped her. "Mike, don't do this. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, anything. Just give me one more chance." Her words sounded desperate, but I could see the fear behind them. She wasn't crying because she was sorry. She was crying because she knew her safety net was gone. Kevin was out of the picture, and now so was I. I shook my head, my voice firm but calm. "There's nothing to fix, Sarah. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. This marriage is over." She collapsed back into her chair, burying her face in her hands. "Mike, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't do this. I can't lose you." But she already had. Whatever love or trust I'd once had for her was gone, destroyed by her actions. I turned and walked away, leaving her sobs echoing through the house. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to remind her of the good times we'd shared, but the larger part of me knew better. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying for herself and the consequences she never thought she'd face. That night, I packed a bag and booked a hotel room. I couldn't bear to spend another night under the same roof. As I drove away, the weight of the situation finally hit me. I felt a mix of relief and sorrow, anger and emptiness, but more than anything, for the first time in months, I wasn't drowning in her lies. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Divorce is never simple, and moving on would take time. But as I looked in the rearview mirror at the house disappearing into the distance, I knew one thing for certain. I deserved better. And now I was finally ready to go find it. Over the next few days, I put everything in motion to end the marriage. I contacted a lawyer, started organizing my finances, and even began searching for a new place to live. It was hard, harder than I thought it would be. Despite everything, there was a part of me that mourned the life we had built together. But every time I felt a pang of regret, I reminded myself of Sarah's betrayal and her calculated choices. Sarah, on the other hand, was in full damage control mode. She flooded my phone with texts and calls, begging me to come back. She swore she'd change, that she'd make it up to me. At one point, she even showed up at my office, crying in the parking lot and pleading for another chance. It was pathetic, honestly. The woman who once carried herself with so much confidence and self-importance was now reduced to this. Her messages were a mix of apologies and justifications. I made a mistake, Mike. We all make mistakes. Please don't throw everything away over this. And you're my soulmate. We can get through this together. But the one that hit me the hardest was, I can't survive without you. You're everything to me. I ignored her. I had already made up my mind. No amount of tears or promises could undo the damage she had caused. I gave her 7 years of my life, and she threw it away for some fleeting thrill. And when it suited her, for money that didn't even exist. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. When I finally served her the divorce papers, she fell apart. She begged me not to go through with it, saying things like, "We can fix this, and I'll be better, I promise." But I stayed firm. I told her she had already made her choice when she decided to betray me, and now it was time for me to make mine. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings and logistical headaches. I was grateful we didn't have kids. It made things less messy. The house was another story. We'd bought it together, but I didn't want it anymore. Too many memories, too much pain. I told her she could keep it, though I doubted she'd be able to afford it on her own. By the time the divorce was finalized, Sarah was a shell of the person she used to be. She looked defeated, like someone who had lost everything, and in a way, she had. She tried to guilt me one last time at the courthouse, telling me she was a better person now and that she deserved another chance. I just shook my head and walked away. When it was all over, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The weight I'd been carrying for months, years even, was gone. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. And that was worth more than any $1,000,000 lottery ticket ever could be. It's been a few months since the divorce was finalized, and life has changed in ways I never could have imagined. At first, it felt strange to be on my own after so many years of being married. I didn't know what to do with the quiet, the empty spaces in my day where Sarah's presence used to be. But over time, I started to rediscover myself. I moved into a small but cozy apartment on the edge of... It's nothing fancy, but it's mine, and it feels like a fresh start. I've been reconnecting with old friends, spending weekends hiking Vermont's beautiful trails, and even picked up a few hobbies I'd always been too busy or too distracted to try. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college, and it's been surprisingly therapeutic. As for Sarah, I've heard bits and pieces about her through mutual friends. She's still living in the house, but Kevin's long gone. Apparently he wanted nothing to do with her after she tried to run back to me. She's been keeping a low profile, probably embarrassed by how everything fell apart. I don't feel sorry for her, though. She made her choices, and now she has to live with them. Looking back, I've learned so much from this whole experience. I've learned that trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. I've learned that it's okay to let go of something or someone that's causing more harm than good. And most importantly, I've learned that my self-worth isn't tied to how someone else treats me. At first, I was afraid I'd never be able to move on, but now I realize this was a blessing in disguise. Sarah's betrayal showed me her true colors, and it gave me the push I needed to find happiness on my own terms. I'm not sure what the future holds for me, but for the first time in years, I'm excited to find out. Whether that means eventually finding someone new or just continuing to focus on myself, I know I'll be okay because I've learned to value myself, and that's something no one can take away from me. So, to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, let me say this: you're stronger than you think. You deserve honesty, respect, and love. Don't settle for anything less. Life's too short to waste on people who don't value you. I'm living proof that you can come out the other side stronger, wiser, and ready to build a better future. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what you think about that story. Have a good day, and bye.